I want to start off today with some good news that some of you may not know, and that is we had 3 students compete in the Skills USA competition in Albuquerque earlier this month, and we had 2 students win, with a student that won first place and a different student won second place in culinary. So Kyle Pacheco, who runs the Kyle won first place, and he will be going to the Nationals later, I think it's in June. Erica Lichentai, who also is in culinary, won second place, and Paul Quintana won second place in the welding sculpture. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through the budget, the recommendations. I'm going to share some slides that we went over with the board at a budget work session last week. The budget is still a work in progress. Some of the numbers that I'm going to show you are close, but may not be exact numbers yet because of the moving pieces. And then some things are still decisions that have to be made by the board based upon recommendations that I'll be making, and still some discussions we're having on some areas of intuition. Then after that, I want to talk about some organizational changes that I'm proposing, that some of which we definitely want to do, but how we do it and some components of it are still open for discussion. And we want to hear ideas from the campus community on how to proceed with those. One of the things that we've tried to do over the last few days is to talk to those directly impacted by any of the reorganizational changes, so that you didn't hear about it in front of a group and it was a total surprise. I'm going to apologize ahead of time if there's any of you that we missed. We tried to touch base with everybody in either individual or group meetings, but it's still a work in progress, and when we get to that portion, we'll move forward, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So first of all, let's talk about the budget. And let's talk about where our revenues are coming from. This year you can see that our revenues were about $34.5 million. This is our final revenue estimates for the year. So this is what we call bar number 1. And it's maybe a slightly different. There was a slight decrease in our state appropriation from what we originally started with. This is our revised tuition and fees number, local appropriation, and then other. Next year, and the reason tuition and fees is in orange is we're still trying to decide what it's going to be. So I put the same number in, but actually it would be a lower number because we're projecting a decrease in student credit hours of about 2% this summer and 6% for next fall and next spring. We're projecting pretty much flat revenue from non-credit and contract training programs. So if we don't do something to increase our tuition and fee revenues, this number will be lower than the 6.7 million, and it'll be more like 6.4 million if I remember. Okay? So we've got to look at that. But otherwise, our state appropriation came down next year. As we all know, the state had to cut all of higher ed. It was about a 2.4% cut across the board. Our actual percentage could have been worse, because they did the starting point was based upon the performance. We had good performance the last couple of years, so we would have gotten an increase if it hadn't been for the cuts that they had to do. So we do have declining revenues at the present time if we don't do something about tuition and fees. And we've got some expenses that I'll be categorized as must-dos or can-do opportunities. So there's good and there's bad. The biggest hit to our budget next year is our fringe benefit costs. They're going way up, and they're going way up for really 2 reasons. One is there will be an increase in our medical health care benefits in October, and of course that's shared by the college and by you as individuals as you participate in the benefits program. And the college pays a percentage of every employee's individual benefits and how much we pay depending on where you are in the pay scale. We follow state law, or in some cases we're a little better than state law requirements there. So we're going to see a $600,000 increase in fringe benefits next year. And what that means for those of you who have worked on budgets before, we've normally budgeted 30% fringe benefits for full-time faculty and staff, 20% benefits for part-time and adjunct faculty. In fact, for a while we only budgeted 12%, I think, for some of those categories. Because of the Affordable Care Act and the changes in the rules that anybody who works 30 hours or more per week, on average, is entitled, we have to offer them benefits, and if they take them, we have to offer it to them. And many of them are taking it. That's great. We want more people to have the health care coverage. But it really impacts our fringe benefit rate, because the lower you are in the pay scale, the higher the percentages in benefits. Because the benefits amount is fixed. Okay? It's a fixed dollar amount for whatever your coverage is. It's not based on a percentage of your salary. So we have some employees for whom we're paying 45 and 55% benefit rates because of the coverage they've taken and how low their pay is. And most of those are part-time people who, are doing other jobs. So that's impacting, that's one of the reasons we've had to raise that fringe benefit rate. So we think we're okay there. Employee retirement will not be going up this coming fiscal year. The amount that is paid by the employer and the amount that is paid by you to ERB is staying the same next year, but it is likely to go up July 1st of 2017. So we need to start thinking about that. So we had to build into the starting budget, really the ending budget for FY16 with the last changes we have to make during the year is our beginning budget for next year. So we had to increase our fringe benefit expenses by $600,000. Next year, we're able to reduce the amount we budgeted for electricity by $250,000 because of the savings we're getting from the solar array. Okay, so that's good. That's a positive. Okay, so thank the voters of Santa Fe County for paying for that 1.5 megawatt solar array. The other thing that we're putting in the budget to begin with, that really is a must-do, is we have a contractual agreement, or pretty close to a contractual agreement, with our full-time faculty. And when you first started as a full-time faculty member, you started a step. Most people start at step 6 or lower. And you're supposed to move up with funds available every year one step until you get to step 10. We have a number of faculty that we didn't move up last year because of the financial stability plan, and for whom they got the restoration of salary, which was a better amount than the step. So we're going to move those full-time faculty who are not at step 10 up one step this next year. And that's going to cost us about $72,000, including benefits. So that's something we pretty much have to do. We have some expenses that have been covered by grants that are ending that we do need to pick up. And in some cases, it's positions that were already here, but we reassigned those people and they got partially paid for by a grant. And now we have to pick it up. So that's an additional $118,000 or so that needs to go into the budget. And then we have built in a contingency in case the state comes back and cuts our funding again. We had originally thought that we would budget $500,000 for the contingency, but based upon the news we're getting from the state, if you read the paper recently, the outlook is looking better. Oil is now almost up to what they budgeted it for, and we're still not in July. So we still want to budget a contingency amount in case the state comes back and cuts us next year. If we don't need it, it'll go to the bottom line. We can use it for one-time things, or if it's early enough in the year, we can reallocate it if need be. So this is the page that I really try to remember. What can I call this page? And all I could come up with, it's must do, can do. Okay? And the can do is the positive. So then, what do I need to recommend to the governing board? What done that? So that's basically what I was just telling you. I'm doing 2 screens. So
You gotta do it on the remote, I think.
okay. So, what am I going to recommend to the governing board? I am going to recommend tuition and fee increases. I'm going to talk to you about some examples here. So the amount in there is still to be determined in terms of the amount of revenue we bring in. I'm going to talk to you in a little bit more detail on this. There are 7 positions that are currently in the budget that are vacant, that we're going to keep vacant for another year. Then, so that's going to save us about $578,000 in salary and fringe benefits. And then I want to implement a reorganization, which I'm going to go through in detail. That's going to cost us about $557,000. So that's pretty much a wash in terms of not filling these positions, but do something differently. And then I'm going to recommend that we ask for the budget request for the priorities. We have a task force that ranked those. There was about 34 or 35, I think was the final number of budget priorities that came in. I looked at those. I changed a couple of priorities. And so on my list of those priorities, I feel like we're going to be able to do the first 12. And I'm going to go through that list here in a minute. We may be able to go further, but we're going to at least do the first 12. And then the board is having conversations about compensation. We haven't been able to give compensation increases in a while. We're looking at, can we do anything? If we do, it's going to be very small. But what we would love to do is to be able to at least give enough so that you don't get hit in your net pay with the increase in benefits. And for those of you who are on the benefits, you probably been positive for those of you. And so this is still to be determined, but we are looking at trying to come up with some kind of cost of living adjustment for everybody but the president, the faculty that moved up a step because they already got a raise, and the temporary and on-call faculty. So we're considering a small cost of living adjustment for all budgeted faculty, staff members, temp employees, and except for the ones that are moving up a step already. And I'll give you a little more detail on that. Let's talk a minute about tuition. In other conversations and in groups, we've talked about a variety of ideas. One of the ideas that we've looked at is, and we're one of the few colleges in New Mexico who don't do this, is a student that takes between 12 and 18 credit hours only pays for the first 12. It encourages students to complete faster. It encourages them to maybe take one more course. But it would cost us revenue. If we implemented this right now, it would cost us about $250,000 in lost revenue. That it's really hard for us to afford to be able to do that right now. So in order to offset that cost, we would need to raise tuition about $2.50 an hour, just to offset that lost revenue. We've had some discussions with the board about let's just have a tuition increase and not do the waiver right now. I met with students, met with student government, looked at some data. 70% of our students, at least 2/3 are taking less than 12 credit hours. Even if we change that rule, the odds of them taking 3 more may be pretty minimal. And so we have a huge impact on those students. So based on the discussion I had with the board, I'm probably not going to recommend the waiver aspect this year. But when we get to it, I'll talk to you about a tuition increase that's likely to be recommended. And then we were looking at fees. And fees, we have fees that are associated with classes, and those aren't impacted by this budget decision. But we have the required fees. And you'll see a slide here in a minute, but right now we have 2 required fees. We have $3.80 per credit hour, which we call a service fee, and we have $1.50 a credit hour, which goes to 2/3 go to student government and 1/3 goes to student activities. And so it's a total of $5.36 per credit hour. Every student that takes a credit course pays fees. Senior citizens pay fees, but when they take credit courses, they only pay $5 per credit hour for tuition, and that's by state law. We can't change that. So if we raise tuition, we don't raise it for seniors. It stays at $5. So we really wanted to try to look at what can we do to make sure every student is paying. I've had seniors talk to me about, well, just raise their tuition. And I can't. I keep telling them you make a donation to the foundation. That I can't raise your tuition. So anyway, so that's where we're going to go. So let me show you some data in New Mexico. This is the current tuition rates for all public colleges and universities in New Mexico. Now, if you can see at the lowest is Luna Community College. They charge $35 for in-district. We're 6 at $44.50 for in-district. San Juan College is we're at $44.50. San Juan's at $46. Mesa Lands is at $50. That's in Tucumcari if you didn't know it. CNM's at $51. And then you go down to the universities and they're all pretty much in the $200 and a per credit hour category. Okay? So, we're pretty low compared to the rest of the state. And then most people have a differential rate. Those that are locally funded have a differential rate for in-state but out of district. Because the people who don't live in our district don't pay taxes to support us, but they do pay state taxes to support us. So that's one thing. And then out-of-state tuition is all over the board. All over the board. So let me show you then what, and this is not for all colleges, this is really just for the independent community colleges that we can find. What do the fees look like? Okay. So Luna Community College right now has just a flat $13 per semester fee for students who register. New Mexico Junior College charges $17 per credit hour for a general usage fee. Clovis Community College has a $10 per credit hour technology and facility fee and a flat per semester $20 fee for a student who registers. We're at the $380 plus the $1.50, as I mentioned. San Juan College does a flat fee. So if you're taking less than 4 credit hours, you pay $77.50. If you take 4 hours or more, you're paying $185. So depending on how many hours you take, it's real high per credit hour, or it's still high per credit hour. And then Mesa Lands is charging basically $10 per credit hour, and CNM is charging $6 per credit hour. So once again, we're on the low end of fees. So here's what is the worst case scenario that I plan to recommend to the board. And that is to increase in-district and in-state tuition by $2.50 per credit hour. I think we ought to increase out-of-state tuition by $10 per credit hour. We don't have that many students taking it out of state, but that is something we'd like to grow, and our out-of-state tuition is less than most in-state tuitions in other states, so we need to get it up a little bit. I'm recommending that we increase our service fee from $3.80 per credit hour to $6. And I'm going to recommend that we implement a technology fee of $2 per credit hour that will be set aside in a fund that can only be used to update computers and infrastructure that directly impacts students. So we have, in some of your offices, we have 12-year-old computers. In some of our labs, we have 10-year-old computers. In some of our labs in media arts, we have Macs that can't run the software that used to be taught these days. And we all know we need to upgrade the wireless infrastructure. We have the bandwidth coming to the campus now, but we need to upgrade some of our infrastructure to increase the speeds around campus. And the students keep asking for us. So this is the worst case scenario for students.
Are you still going to have the SGA student activity?
Yeah, the other fees stay the same. This is only looking at increases. So if this was to happen, it would be basically a $6.70 per credit hour increase in students doing fees. Let me just show you, this is what it would look like for a student. So a student who just takes 3 credit hours would have a $7.50 increase in tuition, $12.60 increase in fees, for a total of $20.10 per semester. Somebody taking 9 credit hours and $60 per semester. Now, if you look at it on a monthly basis, it's $12 a month. 3 Starbucks, maybe 2. I hate to do this to our students, but we really have no other choice. Just to remind everybody, our revenues are 50% from our mill levy, which is set, 30% from the state, which is going down, and 20% from tuition and fees, and that's both credit courses, non-credit courses, contract training. So, unfortunately, I think we have to do something that's going to impact our students in order to do the things that we need to do. We have inflationary costs, we have fringe benefit costs. We'd like to do compensation for everybody that works here. So that's just a chart. And this is all going to be posted on Jack later to do this.
I'm wondering, you said most of our students take less than 12 credits, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know which category they tend to fall in, 3, 6, or 9?
6 to 9. If I remember correctly, the average student is taking about 7 point something credit hours. Josh, do you remember that? I remember when I broke it down by percentages. I didn't bring that spreadsheet.
I'm sorry, I just was, thank you.
The younger generation tends to be more full-time, taking total more credit hours. The older generations tend to be taking 6 credit hours and less. And when I say older population, I'm really talking about those in 50s or older generations.
Old, like me. Season. You know, one of the things that came up when I met with SGA to talk about potential increases, and of course, students don't want to see any increases. I don't want to increase anything. But we had a real good conversation. It actually made me go back and look at the data. And part of that conversation was how many of our students who would love to take 12 or 15 credit hours, but they can't, and it's not just the cost side of the house, it's the family situation, single parents, married with lots of kids, can't do, no daycare available in the evening. So we're going to look at ways we may be able to address some of those, and I am going to be asking the foundation to try to see if we can create some extra scholarship funds to really help out any students that would be impacted just by the tuition increase. Don't know where we'll get on that, but we're going to try to do that. Any other questions for off this slide?
Is there any possibility that the state would reconsider the rate that is, under the circumstances of what the state is doing to our budget, could they possibly reconsider the senior rate? Because what they're doing is they're making a choice between a good bottle of wine and paying more tuition. And they're choosing the bottle of wine.
Well, I would encourage each of you to call your local representative and encourage that. We tried to ask them about that. I think they're hesitant to do it. And I think they're primarily hesitant to do it because senior citizens vote. Other people don't. It's the more reliable voting bloc. So you don't want to tick them off. Be careful how I say that.
But in reality, what percentage of our students are on financial aid, that are financial aid?
So I think there's a question actually for Scott.
We put those numbers together the other day. Do you remember?
So if you think about different kinds of financial aid, most of our students are receiving either the Pell Grant, which is a federal financial aid that their students don't have to pay back. Then another group of students are paying loans out. And so of the degree-seeking population, and that's about 2/3 of our current population, about 30% or on 20 to 30% are on Pell.
And even if you're on a Pell Grant, because what we're doing is we're taking money out of your pocket, because what you don't pay for tuition gets dispersed to you for living costs. So we do have a large percentage on that. We always want to be cautious about putting any more burden on our students than we have to. Any other questions on that? Next thing I want to go to my recommendations or the priorities. We can come back to these. So these are the top 12 priorities that I have recommended and will be recommended to the board. They've heard these. We had discussions about them. They have not made any decisions because we did it in a work session. So I'll be making the final recommendations on April 27th. But I think the top rated ones, and pretty much both by the committee and by myself, is the dental faculty. We need another full-time person for accreditation purposes. And by the way, she's not here, but I want to thank Amna and all the people from our healthcare areas and all our students who worked at the Mission of Mercy, is what it was called, event this past weekend at the convention center. It was, they served a lot of people, And I know specifically, and I'm sure there's other people like this, but I got an email from a former employee here who had ran into Amna, and she had been there for 30 hours straight.
Wow.
So we made a lot of difference. So if you see Amna, thank her, and thank everybody. I put in parentheses with each of these kind of the primary reason for doing them. We need to get some people trained and certified in Title IX. These are regulations that apply to us as a college. We've started some training there. We need to get a variety of people certified in that. So this was one of the requests. It totals about $30,000. With our new policy, and if you've been reading the news lately, legislative requirements, insurance requirements, we have to implement more background checks. In fact, for all new hires going forward, we think that's going to cost us about $25,000 a year. It's a small one for $9,500, but we need to have HR able to do salary analysis comparing jobs to the local market, the regional market, and the national market. So that is in there. We need to convert a position that is right now temporary and 4 days a week in HR. That's basically their IT, internal software expert. And so the plan right now is to convert that temporary position to a permanent position and full-time. We've got a lot of things to go on down there with HR using both people admin for the job posting, application tracking, for our new PMAT system, for the staff evaluations and faculty evaluations, we hope. And then Banner. We've not been fully using Banner in HR. We really need to start doing that. And so this is really the difference in cost between salary and benefits, converting it from a current temporary job to a full-time job. In ceramics, we've had a student worker who really has functioned as a technician for a number of years, and I understand they finally moved on. And there's some safety issues in ceramics if we don't really have the right person in there. So we're going to offer a half-time technician to work in ceramics. Distance education. We only have one person in there. We need more than 2 people. This is a start. We need to hire somebody. The Sim Lab is a growing area for us. Great, thank you. We've been borrowing from the respiratory therapy program because Ray has been wearing 2 hats as the Sim Center director and the clinical coordinator. Director for clinical director for respiratory. We want to move Ray 100% over to the Sim Lab, which will then now allow respiratory to hire a new clinical director. And we're going to offset this with some increased revenues. So we have the opportunity, if we have somebody focused there, to bring in more contract training revenues in the Sim Center. So this is the net of all those changes. You're going to see there's 2 priorities that relate to the testing center here. The first one is to expand their hours, and that would allow us to convert somebody who's part-time right now to, I think, full-time. And that means we'll have more hours in the testing center. That'll partially be offset by some increased testing revenues because we're doing more and more third-party testing, and we get paid for doing those. So that's my priority number 9. On the Veterans Resource Center, we need to once again convert I think it's 3/4 time now position into a full-time position. And Greg has been trained. He's actually going to pick up become the certifying agent for veterans benefits, which he's going to report to Barbara Tucci's office for that purpose, and he'll report differently for managing the Veterans Resource Center. So this is a salary difference and a few supplies differences there. Going to hire 1 more advising position, and we'll talk about the reorganization structure, which will impact advisors here in a minute. And then we're going to create a management position in the testing center. Right now it's just a lead specialist. Is that what it is?
I forget, yeah.
It's lead something. Anyway, so those are the recommendations. There may be money to go 1 or 2 more priorities down. Peg, you're next.
Okay, but I just have to say that when the ratings, and thank you for saying I'm next, but when the ratings came out, the library was number 3 and has now moved to number 13, and I would argue that we are vital to student success as vital as everything that's been listed up there.
I don't disagree with you being vital to student success. Some of these are things that we have to do for legal and other reasons, and so this will be my argument to the board, but I will promise you the library is number 13 on my list. So there's a good chance we'll get there.
And we were I have to point out that we were number 3 in the scoring, so I will just leave it at that, thank you.
That's kind of it for the budget side of the house. If you want to ask questions here before I go into reorganization, we'll come back and do questions at the end too.
I just want to applaud you for number 7. We have worked hard, waited a long time for that. When will that be happening?
Well, the biggest challenge for us now is the money is there July 1st. We need to get the job descriptions written. We need to get the postings done and then go through the whole process. So my hope is we'll have somebody in place by fall semester. It depends on how quickly we can get the job description done. I think we may have had a description once before, but it's changed because it was a grant-funded position at that time.
So I'm kind of wondering, what about things like lab fees? Because as I understand it now, the lab fees go into a general fund, and then when I try and go and get supplies for the lab, we've spent all our money. Is there any way that the lab fees?
I promise you, your lab fees do not cover your supplies expenses. So if this keeps being asked all the time, I want my lab fees to come to me. If they come to you, then that's your total budget. Nobody's lab fee covers their cost. So right now, lab fees, and many lab fees have been increased this year. It goes through curriculum committee for the most part. I think they probably all go through curriculum committee, where it's, they can tell me if that's for sure. And then they have to be approved by me. But they do go into the general fund. Nobody's fees cover the cost of the supplies they consume. So if we start moving in the direction of assigning revenues, that's your budget. And I don't think you want to do that. So, but we do need to look at fees, but once again, we want to be careful about raising fees. And so we do have some programs that probably make money for us because they don't have a lot of cost. And then we have other programs that cost us more than we bring in. And so we don't, first of all, we can't complicate our systems too much. It makes it too hard to manage. But I will promise you, nobody brings in the fees to cover their cost. Yes? So let's talk about some reorganization ideas that I want to propose. I'm not proposing any reorganization that's going to result in any rifts or layoffs. I'm not really proposing anything that's much of a reassignment. There's a little bit of a reassignment proposed in here. But the reason I'm proposing reorganizations is I'm going to go through a couple of events that have happened that have created opportunities to do things differently. But also, we're a quality institution and we're always looking for opportunities for continuous improvement. And so, just because we've always done it some way, it doesn't mean we can't try another way that would be better. And it also doesn't mean that if we try it this way and it doesn't work, we'll go do something else. Or we'll go back to the original way. So, I want to say that what I'm proposing for reorganizations has nothing to do with anybody not doing their job. In fact, it's a celebration of what we've done over the last really 5 or 6 years. We've started a lot of things through the Title V grant, through the organizational structure that we've had here for the last several years, and we've learned some things. And so now we have an opportunity with some retirements and some other vacancies to do some things differently. So I'm going to run through those. And unfortunately, Carmen had to leave because she had an appointment that was set for a long time ago. But Carmen Gonzalez is going to be stepping down as the Vice President of Student Success at the end of June. Now, once again, she's going to flock going into retirement because she's going to stay on. She's going to stay on as the Principal Investigator for the TAC grant. That's a part-time job. It's fully funded by the grant. She's going to help get that, keep that going, and hopefully stay on until the end. And she may do some special projects for me. But that means I have a Vice President's position that's going to be vacant. Okay? We had an immediate need for a student affairs officer. When Jill Douglas retired, that was one of the things that she primarily did. We've had other people that have done backup, and for a variety of reasons, we need to do something different. And so I did check around, and I couldn't wait for a student affairs officer, because we always have student issues that come up just about every day, and we have to deal with those. And so I did ask around, you know, what might we do in the interim, and does anybody have any ideas who might be good at it? Well, the same name came up over and over again, and it happened to be Barb Mascarenas, who was working in my office. So I talked to her about would she be interested, and when she said yes, we also decided she couldn't do it out of the president's office. So Barb has been temporarily reassigned to do the student affairs officer position and continue working on the policy issues that she's been helping us on. And so with Barb moving out of my office, and you'll see where she's reporting at this present time, that means I needed somebody to help me out. So I was able to talk Rosemary Garcia-Ortry. Talk her into coming back over to support me. She's been in that office before, and she's still supporting Carmen where that needs to be. And when Carmen moves out of her job, she's actually going to move over to be an office near me, so that'll be easy for Rosemary to support both of us. And then when we're looking at organizational activities, you know, there's the continuous improvement opportunities, but there's also the fact that we have reduced state funding and fewer student credit hours. You know, we got to think about how long is that trend going to go on. Okay? And so we've got to be careful about staffing ourselves for a much larger organization if we're not going to need that larger organization. So we're going to make a few changes. Number one, we're going to stay focused on student success. We talked about this already. We're going to celebrate what happened in Title V and our current structure. But we also want to look for opportunities, and this is one of the reasons we've been having these all-campus meetings. We've been doing a variety of things. We've got to improve our cross-campus and cross-departmental collaboration. We've got to figure out, can we integrate any of our services and do it better to meet the students' needs while at the same time being able to do it with less funding available. So that's really my goal of any reorganization at this point in time. And it really all relates to continuous improvement. So here's what I want to do. And some of these are pretty much set in stone. Others are open for conversation and feedback. I want to go back to the model we had before with one vice president for academic and student affairs. That's going to solve two problems. One's a financial problem, because we won't be replacing a high-paid vice president's position. But additionally, I think we created a problem when we called the division student success, because student success is everybody's business at the college. And I've heard people say, oh, but that's their job. Well, it's everybody's job. So that's why we want to go back to calling it academic and student affairs, instead of calling the division of student success. So that's a given. We got to go there. Another given relates to advising. And that is based upon the good work that's being done, the improved graduation rates, but the request from faculty and from schools, we're going to move 5 advisors and embed them in the schools. They'll be housed in, we have 6 schools. The only one that's not going to get an advisor is fitness education, which is here or not. But we looked at the number of declared majors in every area. It's pretty evenly divided. So the plan right now, and this can move a little bit, we're going to go through a process, figure out who the advisors are that go to which school. With the one new advisor, we actually have 8 advisors. So if 5 are in the schools, 3 are in the Welcome and Advising Center. But also the plan right now is the ones that are assigned to the schools would be officed and work in the schools 4 days a week and spend 1 day a week in the Welcome and Advising Center. And that would help us keep the collaboration going back and forth, but that would also help us to cover the needs, especially at peak times when we have a whole lot of new students coming in. And those would be staggered, so if you go to in theory, there would always be 4 people, 4 advisors working in the welcome and classes. Now, even though they're embedded in the schools, they're all going to report to one position. Okay? So all advisors are going to report to the same person. That's how we kind of did it before, when we had multiple counselors who did counseling and advising. Even though they were housed in the schools, they still reported to one person in a central location. Putting the advisors in the school, definitely something we want to do. How we determine who that is, what if it's that 4 days, 1 day makeup, that's open for discussion. The people that are working in advising, they're going to have some great ideas. Our faculty and staff in the schools are going to have some great ideas. So we're going to work some of those issues out as we move forward. Also, what's happened is, with one less VP, we currently have 1 vacant AVP position with the retirement of Jill Douglas. My long-term goal is to not have any AVP positions reporting to a vice president. And my long-term goal would be, and I'm going to show you a draft org chart in a minute, would be to have 4 senior directors. So they wouldn't be paid at the same level as a VP or even as an AVP, but basically what would happen if we had these 4 senior directors, we'd have 4 people replacing 3 positions. And so, but at a lower cost to the college. You know, I hear comments all the time, well, we have too many highly paid people. Well, if I eliminate a position, unfortunately the work wouldn't go away.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have to figure out how to redistribute. Some of it we need to work smarter, work more efficiently. But if we can move to this model of 4 senior directors, we have 4 people doing 3 people's work, and plus doing some extra things. And you'll see that. We're going to go to 2 for now because we have an AVP who's still here. And I'm not going to do any RIFs. Okay? So that AVP is going to basically have 2 sets of management duties, and you'll see this in the org chart in a minute. The other thing is to balance the load, because, like, you know, one of the reasons to have the senior directors is I can't have all these positions reported directly to Margaret. Okay? She can only handle so much. And so we've got to level that a little bit. So one of the things we're going to do is go back to what it was kind of before in this. We're going to move marketing back to, recruitment back to marketing. Yeah, we're moving marketing to report to recruitment. They have to be closely aligned, and that also allows for one person who's currently working, I think, part-time in marketing to also pretty much be assigned to recruitment. So it really increases their efforts, and you'll see that on the chart here in a second. And then we're going to merge contract training and continuing education together. And we're going to go out and post for a position to focus on that, partially because Gordon posted it on Facebook. Gordon Flute is also going to retire in the next few months. And so we need to get somebody in place. And so we're going to try to put a new effort on contract training and non-credit workforce development, as well as other continuing ed areas. So we're going to merge those 2 together. And Ann Black has done a great job of helping to both manage contract training and do grants over the past couple of years, is going to move over and do just grants. And we're going to move that function into OPI, because so much of what she needs to write grants and turn them in is data. And so that's just a move to do that. And we think that'll help things work a little bit better. So I'm going to show you a few drafts. These are drafts. You'll see big letters, draft. Doesn't show up as much on there. These are draft. This is what academic and student affairs would look like. Anything in green is a new position. Anything in orange is kind of a reporting change or a little bit of a restructure. So we still have reporting directly to Margaret at the top. We've got our executive assistant. We've got the student affairs officer. We have the early childhood center of excellence / kids campus operations. And we have the coordinator position, which is Teresa, who does the scheduling, the catalog, contracts, you name it. Still has the 3 deans that we report to. And then you see the first orange box is AVP. Okay? So that's Cheryl right now. And then there's 2 columns under Cheryl. And Can you read that?
No.
Okay. So, over on the left-hand side there, this is the Welcome and Advising Center. It's the director of the first year experience in advising. It's the director for the Center of Academic Transitions. It's the registrar, and it's the director of financial aid. Those are all the columns. Zero it in. Yeah, mine didn't zoom in, so over on the right-hand side is the Director of Disability Services, the counseling, student development, and the veteran services. Now, eventually, those might be two different columns reporting to two different senior directors if we go to the model I think we might go to. And then the two senior directors that we would hire right now, one would be of academic support, so it would be the librarian, tutoring center, testing center, distance education, college for working adults if we want to revamp and restart, and the trio youth build grant, the big grants that we instruction would go there. And then the second new senior director would be much more instructional focused, academic focused, so this would be where the director of adult education would report, continuing ed and contract training, adjunct faculty office, and we want to create a new office for faculty development. And so our plan right now, at least for full-time faculty, is to try to have full-time faculty designate a person who would go on probably 100% release time for a year or two or three, whatever it needs to do, to coordinate and manage faculty development. And then the person who's in HR can focus on staff development and training. And we may look at how we might address a little bit more of the adjunct faculty needs. But this is something that we'd kind of like to try going forward. If you go to the next one, instead of looking at it as a R chart, it's really a functional chart. Okay. This is by function. So one of the things, and I'm going to ask people to do, I've met with some different people already, and to try to think about how we can integrate what we do a little bit better. You don't always have to manage the people, you can manage the function. And maybe the function is delivered by multiple people, some of whom are cross-trained. And so we'll just explore those ideas. How might we do some things differently? We can't afford to hire too many specialists, and we have cycles in some jobs. So if we could figure out a way to do it, maybe you train people across the board, and so instead of doing this and then going down not having much to do and doing this, we balance it out a little bit. So one of the areas we need to look at there is advising. We've got new students who are totally new. We've got declared majors, most likely they go to those schools. But we also have the people who are getting ready to graduate and transfer. So why do we necessarily have to have advisors that just do this or this or this? Why can't we have everybody trained? They may report to people for different functions, and some people may be more specialist than others, and just we want to look for those opportunities to do some of those kind of things. That's just one example that came off the top of my head. Let's go to the next slide. This is what marketing would look like. Once again, the orange is the reporting change. So you see where Marcos would now be on the line reporting to marketing. So this is Marcos and Daniela, and Colette is the other person. So they really get a third person to help out with recruitment efforts. Everything we do in recruitment should be totally closely aligned with and tied with all our marketing campaigns and advertisements. And then this is what Opie would look like with Ann Black's position moving over there as the director of grants, and letting her focus on grants, which takes most of her time anyway. And we need to continually do more grants. Okay. Questions, comments, recommendations?
I want to ask what happened to the bilingual counseling too, because on the list that was on staff, we were about 8, I think. And I'm just wondering if there's some other opportunities for that. Kate's not even here today with us because she is until you go through the point.
It's still on the list, it's just not in my first 12.
Okay, we feel like we're an integral part of student success and supporting students.
Everything on the list was student success. If we funded everything on the list, it was well over $1 million. And we don't have $1 million, unfortunately. Any other questions? Comments? We want feedback on this. Like I said, it's not all set in stone. We want to hear your ideas, because sometimes those of you who are working, I can't think of a better term, working in the trenches, you may have better ideas than those of us who have just been observing from afar. But did want to try to do things to improve our student success rates, to take advantage of quality improvement opportunities, and to have as little impact on the budget as we can, knowing that we really don't have new revenues. Were there other written questions outside, Janet?
Oh, I believe there are.
See if we got a few minutes here. Think about it. I know people will have feedback. Change is never easy, but it can also be invigorating if you put your mind to it and then focus on it for that aspect. One of the other things I didn't get to mention that's one of our opportunities that does free up some money in the budget, because Jennifer is here now, is the fact that our kids' campus is pretty much break even. So that means we don't have to transfer as much of our institutional IG money to help subsidize the function of kids' campus.
Please get the baseball.
Get the baseball and track's usable. Looking at it, costs a lot of money. You can go over there and play the role of the Pied Piper and get all those prairie dogs to follow you on campus. Make it a whole lot easier. We went out there, and I want to thank Malvina and the grounds crew at Palm and everybody else to try to get the baseball field maybe in shape, because we do have a softball team that's been put together, and the real challenge is the large number of prairie dogs.
Okay, I know they've already done a lot of work out there already, so I just wanted to thank you for all the work they've already done and what they're looking for.
Thank you.
That was a question of the budget. Here's some good feedback. It's a great opportunity. What's your favorite color?
The favorite color is purple. I'm not the only one here, I know. What classes do I feel like I teach?
Well, that becomes our problem right now.
What have I taught in the past? Well, I'll tell you what, I could probably still teach most of these. I've taught accounting, I've taught computer science, I've taught economics, I've taught hospitality management, I've taught computer science. I could probably still teach most of it. My primary teaching was accounting. When I retire, I'll come back to teach. I wouldn't have enough time to focus on it right now, I'm afraid. Maybe short classes I might think about. Workshop type classes. Any other questions? Is that all the ones that are in that presentation?
We're translating.
Translating, oh.
And here's one about grants and loan money.
I do not know if this is true that UNM gets their financial aid disbursements on the first day of school or not. Is it true? We have chosen to do it later just because we save a lot of money because we make disbursements and then we have to get it back. If a student disenrolls, then we're on the hook for the money. So once again, if we did that, it comes out of the cash available to operate the college, because it's our money, not the federal aid disbursement money that does that. And in fact, we don't even get the federal aid disbursement until a few weeks into the semester, so we would have to have the cash up front to do that. Okay?
So this is a question about custodial and shift changes that I'm not sure you're gonna be able to answer, but
So this is a question I can answer, but maybe,
if you that's a question about
it's a question about
custodial
changing the
hours.
late shift of custodians to
We'll have to get back.
an earlier shift. I don't know that, so that would have to come from the custodial area, and I don't think there's anybody here.
This is a question about how personally in touch with the academic calendar are you at all times?
All times?
You know exactly what's going on the academic calendar.
I have a pretty good feel for what's going on in the academic calendar. I know when finals are, I know when midterm is, I know when drop dates are, and so forth. So I'm not sure, I don't teach, so I don't know everything day to day anymore. And I don't think that's the president's job, to stay on top of the academic calendar. The president's job is to make sure that the college is operating, that we're fiscally responsible, and to spend a lot of time in the community gaining this support, whether it be financial support, legislative appropriations, or voter support for future bond elections, which may be coming up. So, to me, that's and sure, I have a management team in place to manage those, but I don't. I know probably more of the day-to-day details than a lot of presidents would know, only because I grew up here. I've been in so many different positions here, which wouldn't always happen at other places. I try to keep up as much as I can.
That brings up a good,
Something good though about these questions. We do have a suggestion box on Jack, and it takes a few days to get your comment answered, but any feedback about using that? Do you know people who have used it successfully? Is that working? You can always put something on there that goes to the executive team, and we do try to answer everyone.
There are some questions that don't deserve an answer, so you don't have to see them.
I have a different question. I noticed on the board agenda that results from the survey about the Student Success Friday are going to be presented, and I wonder when the rest of the campus might see those survey results.
On Friday, that's actually not the results of the survey, that's the data that was shared during the Student Success Symposium. The executive team members did do a preliminary response. Right now, we do have some of the aggregate information, some of the quantitative stuff ready. Right now, we're going through the comments, and we also want to make sure that the Spanish speakers has a chance to provide us feedback. And as you all know, that requires translations, and that takes a little more time. So my hope is we could have it shared to the community within the next month.
We'll check on the board agenda, because it was really supposed to be the data that we were sharing this time around, not the results yet. So Donna, let's check on that and make sure it says that. Other questions? Comments?